A sloth, a donkey, and a curious human. Send a prompt and see what they're doing. One hits record with a question on his mind. Two brothers pick it up, see what they find. Corn takes his time, Herman's got the facts. Back and forth, they never hold back. My weird prompts, come on in, that's where we begin. My weird prompts, glad you're here.
This episode was generated using artificial intelligence. Please verify facts.
You know, Corn, this whole show runs on GPU compute, and we wouldn't be here without Modal.
Seriously. And that's what powers all our text-to-speech. Everything you're hearing right now.
They're an AI infrastructure platform. Developers use them to run GPU workloads in the cloud with zero infrastructure headaches.
If you're building anything with AI, check them out. Modal.com. Alright, we have a heavy hitter today. Daniel sent over a prompt that is near and dear to the hearts of every developer who has ever stared at a terminal and wondered why their code suddenly stopped working after a simple update. He wants us to dig into the high art of software release management. We are talking semantic versioning, or SemVer, the philosophy of keep a changelog, and the magic of conventional commits. Basically, how do we stop the digital world from breaking every time someone hits the publish button?
This is essentially the social contract of the internet, Corn. People think of code as just logic, but software distribution is actually a communication problem. And by the way, for the nerds keeping track, today's episode is powered by Google Gemini 3 Flash. I am Herman Poppleberry, and I have been waiting for an excuse to nerd out on versioning numbers for a long time.
I knew you'd be excited. Most people see a version number like 2.4.1 and think, oh, neat, a bigger number. But for you, that's a manifesto, isn't it? Daniel's prompt really focuses on the contract between the developer and the user. So, let's start with the basics for those who might just be clicking Update All on their apps without thinking. What is the SemVer spec actually trying to tell us?
It is trying to prevent what we call dependency hell. Imagine you are building a house and you buy a specific type of bolt. Then the bolt manufacturer changes the thread size but keeps the same part number. Your house falls down. SemVer prevents that by using a three-part number, major, minor, and patch. Major is for breaking changes, minor is for new features that don't break anything, and patch is for bug fixes. If you see that first number change, you should be worried. If it's just the last two, you're usually safe to upgrade.
It sounds so simple in theory, but I've seen projects that seem to stay on version 0 point something for a decade. Looking at you, early Terraform, or even some of the big JavaScript libraries, if the contract says version 1.0 means it's stable, what does it mean when a massive, world-dominating tool refuses to leave the zero phase?
That is actually a huge point of contention in the open source world. According to the SemVer.org spec, version 0.y.z is the Wild West phase. The spec literally says that at this stage, the API is unstable and anything can change at any time. When a project like React or Terraform stays in 0.x for years despite being used by Fortune 500 companies, they are essentially using it as a legal shield. They're saying, hey, if we break your entire infrastructure tomorrow, don't complain. We told you we weren't at 1.0 yet. It's a way to bypass the contract.
It's like a get-out-of-jail-free card for developers. But once you hit that 1.0 milestone, the stakes change. You can't just move fast and break things anymore. You have to be intentional. Daniel mentioned the major bump anxiety. Why are developers so scared of moving from version 2 to version 3?
Because a major bump is an admission that you are inconveniencing your users. It means you've removed a function, changed a data structure, or altered a requirement in a way that requires the user to rewrite their own code. In a corporate environment, a major bump in a dependency might mean a week of refactoring for a whole team. But here's the thing, hiding a breaking change inside a minor update is actually much worse. That's a betrayal of trust. SemVer argues that you should bump the major version frequently if your API is evolving. It's a signal of honesty. It tells the user, stop, look at the notes, and prepare for a transition.
I love that idea of versioning as a signal of honesty. But the number alone doesn't tell the whole story. If I see a jump from version 4 to version 5, I know it's broken, but I don't know how it's broken. That brings us to the second part of Daniel's prompt, the changelog. He pointed us toward keep a changelog, which has some pretty spicy opinions on how to talk to users.
Oh, they are very strict, and rightly so. The number one rule of keep a changelog is that a changelog is for humans, not machines. You see so many projects that just dump their Git log into a text file. You open it up and it's just 50 lines of fixed typo, added stuff, merged branch, and I hate my life. That is useless to a user. A real changelog needs to be curated. It needs sections like added, changed, deprecated, removed, and fixed.
Fixed typo is my favorite entry to see in a public changelog. It really inspires confidence in the codebase. But honestly, who has the time to manually curate these things? If you're a solo dev or a small team pushing code every day, sitting down to write a beautiful prose summary of your work feels like a chore. Is there a way to bridge that gap between the messy reality of daily coding and the clean, professional changelog Daniel is talking about?
That is exactly where conventional commits come in. This is the automation part of the puzzle. Instead of writing random commit messages like finish the thing, you use a structured format. You start your commit message with a type like feat for a new feature, fix for a bug, or you put a little exclamation point or a breaking change footer if you're breaking things. Because the messages are standardized, you can run a script like Semantic Release that looks at your commit history, decides if you need a major, minor, or patch bump, updates the version number, and generates the changelog for you.
Wait, so the computer reads my commit messages and then decides how to version my software. That sounds efficient, but also a little dangerous. If I forget that exclamation point on a breaking change, the tool might push a minor update and break everyone's site. It puts a lot of pressure on the developer to get the commit message right every single time.
It does, but it enforces a discipline that actually makes you a better developer. If you know that typing feat is going to trigger a major release, you tend to think twice about whether that change is actually necessary or if you could make it backward. This structure also helps with what Daniel called Dependency Hell. If everything in your ecosystem follows these rules, your package manager like npm or pip can automatically resolve versions. It can say, I know version 1.5.0 is safe because the dev used the feat tag, not the breaking tag.
I want to go back to the human element for a second. Daniel mentioned how mature projects like Dataset or SeqY handle this. Simon Willison, who created Dataset, is famous for his release notes. He doesn't just list the features, he explains the why. He might say, we changed this because we realized users were struggling with the previous syntax. A machine can't write that. Conventional commits can tell me what's changed, but it can't explain the design philosophy.
You've hit on the automation versus curation debate. The best projects use a hybrid approach. They use conventional commits to handle the heavy lifting, the version bumping, and the basic list of fixes. But then a human maintainer goes in and writes a highlights section at the top. Think of it like a movie trailer versus the full credits. The automated part is the credits. The manual part is the trailer that gets people excited about the new version.
I like that, but what happens when things go horribly wrong? Daniel brought up yanked releases. I've been there. You push a version, everything looks great, and then 10 minutes later, the bug reports start flooding in because you accidentally deleted the database connection string. In the old days, people would just delete the release and pretend it never happened. Why is that a bad idea now?
Deleting a release is a cardinal sin in modern software because of reproducibility. If I built a system yesterday using version 2.1.0, and today you delete that version from the internet, my build process will break. I can't recreate my environment. The keep a changelog standard says you should mark it as yanked in the notes. You keep the version number there, but you put a big warning sign on it and immediately push a fix in the next version. It's about leaving a paper trail. It's the black box flight recorder of software.
It's basically honesty as a service. Speaking of honesty, let's talk about the post 1.0 anxiety again. I see so many projects that are on version 24 or 32. Chrome is on what? Version 100 and something. Does the number lose meaning when it gets that high? Does it stop being a contract and just become a timestamp?
Chrome and Firefox use calendar versioning or rapid release cycles, which is a different beast entirely. In those cases, the version number is mostly a marketing tool or a way to track the passage of time. But for a library that other developers use, a high version number is actually a sign of health. It means the project is alive and is willing to break things to move forward. Look at the Angular transition years ago. They went from version 1, which was called AngularJS, to version 2, and it was a complete rewrite. People were furious. But by using a major version bump, the team was being technically accurate. They were saying, this is a new world.
It's the difference between a product version and an API version. If I'm using an app, I don't care if it's version 10 or version 20. But if I'm a developer building on top of that app, those numbers are my lifeblood. I'm thinking about the security section in the changelog too. Daniel mentioned that as a standard section. In an era of constant supply chain attacks, how does SemVer help with security?
It's huge for automated patching. If you have a security vulnerability in version 2.4.1 and the fix is in 2.4.2, a good package manager can automatically pull that fix because it knows, based on the SemVer contract, that a patch release won't break your existing code. This allows for unattended upgrades of critical security libraries. Without SemVer, you'd have to manually audit every single update to make sure it didn't break your site while trying to save it from hackers.
That makes total sense. So, if I'm a developer listening to this and I want to start doing things the right way, what's the first step? Do I just start naming my versions differently, or is there a cultural shift I need to make?
It starts with the unreleased section. This is a brilliant tip from the Keep a Changelog folks. Most people only write the changelog right before they hit publish, but you should have an unreleased header at the top of your file from day one. Every time you finish a task, you add a bullet point there. Then, when you're ready to release, you just change that header to the new version number and the date. It turns the changelog from a stressful end-of-project task into a living document.
I love that. It's like keeping a diary instead of trying to write your memoirs in a single night. In the ISO 8601 date format, Daniel mentioned that too. Year, month, day. It's the only logical way to date things. If you write 04-1026, is that April 10th or October 4th? You cause a geopolitical crisis just by trying to date your software.
Well, I shouldn't say exactly, but you're spot on. ISO 8601 is the only format that sorts correctly in a file system and avoids all regional confusion. It's the small details like that which separate the professional projects from the hobbyist ones. When you see a project with a clean SemVer history, a human-readable changelog in ISO format, and clear breaking change warnings, you know you can trust that code.
It builds a reputation for the developer. We talk a lot about code quality, but the way you release code is often more important than the code itself. You can have the most beautiful optimized algorithm in the world, but if you distribute it in a way that breaks everyone's build or confuses your users, nobody is going to use it.
It's the user experience of the developer. We spend so much time on the UX of the app's interface, but the UX of the library is the versioning and documentation. Daniel's point about conventional commits really highlights this. If you use fix, feat, and breaking change, you are providing a clear map for anyone who wants to contribute to your project or use it. It's about reducing the cognitive load for everyone involved.
Let's talk about the breaking change convention for a second. In conventional commits, you can put an exclamation point after the type, like feat exclamation point. It's so aggressive, I love it. It's like the commit message is screaming at you. Feature, but it will break your stuff. It's a very honest way to communicate.
It is. And there's a technical reason for it too. Tools that parse these messages look for that exclamation point or the breaking change footer to automatically trigger a major version bump in the build pipeline. This means the developer doesn't even have to remember to change the version number from 2 to 3. The system sees the exclamation point and says, okay, this is a major release. I'm incrementing the first digit. It removes human error from the equation.
So we've got the machine handling the numbers, the developer handling the commit messages, and the human user getting a beautiful curated changelog at the end. It's a perfect harmony. But I have to ask, what about the patch releases? Sometimes I see projects that are on version 1.0.500. Is that a sign that they're just fixing a lot of bugs, or that they're afraid to add features?
It usually means they have a very robust CI/CD pipeline, continuous integration and continuous deployment. If every single bug fix is pushed immediately to the users, you'll see those patch numbers climb very fast. It's actually a sign of a very active project. In the old days, you'd wait 6 months to bundle 50 fixes into a minor release. Now, we prefer to push them as soon as they're ready. As long as it's a true patch, meaning it doesn't change the API and doesn't add a big new feature, it's zero risk for the user.
What about the minor bump? That feels like the sweet spot for most users. You get something new, like a dark mode or a new search filter, but you don't have to change anything on your end. It's like getting a free gift with your purchase.
The minor bump is where the value lives. If you see a jump from 2.4 to 2.5, you know there's something new to play with. But even there, the keep a changelog rules say you should be careful. Don't just list the feature, mention if anything was deprecated. Deprecation is the polite warning of the software world. You're saying, hey, this function still works for now, but we're going to remove it in the next major version, so start moving away from it.
It's the graceful exit. I've always appreciated when a library tells me 6 months in advance that they're going to change something. It gives me time to plan. It's so much better than waking up on a Monday morning to a broken build because a maintainer decided they didn't like the name of a variable anymore.
That is the version promiscuity problem that SemVer was designed to fix. People used to just assume that the next version would work. With SemVer, you don't have to assume. You can set your package manager to _versioning, which basically says, give me any version that isn't a major bump. So if I'm on version 2.1, the computer will automatically grab 2.2 or 2.9, but it will never grab version 3.0 without my explicit permission.
It's like a digital bodyguard for your code. You can come in if you're a bug fix, but if you're a breaking change, you're not on the list. I think we've covered the what and the how, but let's talk about the why one more time. Daniel is very active in open source, GitHub, NPM, Hugging Face. For someone like him, this isn't just about being organized, it's about community.
When you follow these standards, you are showing respect for your fellow developers' time. You're saying, I value your workflow enough to be disciplined about mine. It also makes it much easier for new contributors to join your project. If they see a clean commit history and a clear release process, they feel more confident that their contributions will be handled professionally. It's the difference between a messy garage and a world-class laboratory.
I'm thinking about the SQLite example again. That project is legendary for its stability. They have tests that cover every single line of code, but their release notes are also a masterclass in clarity. They'll explain a 1% performance improvement in a specific SQL query with absolute precision. That level of detail is what builds a multi-decade legacy.
And they don't use Git in the traditional way. They use Fossil, which was built specifically to handle their philosophy of versioning. They emphasize the permanent record even more than most. But the principles are the same. Whether you're using Git, Fossil, or Subversion, the contract of SemVer and the communication of a changelog are universal.
So, as we wrap up this technical deep dive, what are the practical takeaways for the folks listening at home who might be feeling a little overwhelmed by all these acronyms?
First, start using semantic versioning today. If you have a project, give it a version number and follow the major point, minor point patch rule. Second, create a changelog.md file in your repository and use the unreleased section. Don't just dump your Git log, write for a human being. Third, look into conventional commits. Even if you don't automate the release process yet, just starting to label your commits as feat or fix will change the way you think about your code.
And for the love of all that is holy, use ISO dates. Don't make us guess what month it is. We have enough problems in 2026 without wondering if your software was released in April or October.
I think the most important takeaway is that versioning is a form of empathy. You are imagining the person on the other side of the screen who is trying to use your work. You are making their life easier by being predictable. In a world of chaotic software, predictability is a superpower.
That's a great way to put it. Software is an act of empathy. Who knew a bunch of dots and numbers could be so emotional? This has been a fascinating look at the hidden infrastructure of the software world. Thanks to Daniel for the prompt. He really knows how to get us into the weeds on things that actually matter for the plumbing of the internet.
It's the plumbing that keeps the water running. Corn. Without these versioning contracts, the web would be a much more broken and frustrating place. I'm glad we got to shine a light on the people who take the time to do it right.
All right. That's our deep dive into the world of SemVer and changelogs. Before we sign off, a big thanks to our producer Hilbert Flumingtop for keeping us on track. And of course, a huge thank you to Modal for providing the GPU credits that power the generation of this show. We literally couldn't do this without them.
If you found this useful, or if you're a developer who has a strong opinion on whether version 1.0 is a trap, we'd love to hear from you. You can reach us at show@myweirdprompts.com.
This has been My Weird Prompts. If you are enjoying the show, a quick review on your podcast app really helps us reach new listeners and keeps the algorithm happy. You can also find us at myweirdprompts.com for the full archive and our RSS feed.
Until next time, keep your versions semantic and your changelogs human.
See ya. This episode was produced using Google Gemini 3 Flash, text-to-speech by Chatterbox.
Thanks for listening to our show, My Weird Prompts, where our thoughts go from slow takes to facts on cue. We change and follow through. My weird prompts, that's the close from sloth, from man, from long-eared host. My weird prompts, until next time, stay curious, keep weirding.